Good evening, and quick constituency and by-election update. Most of the results are in. The picture is more or less clear. In fact, it probably won't be necessary for us to come in tomorrow morning because the story has mostly unfolded itself already. But first, let's quickly do a roundup and see what happened in these by-elections. Firstly, let's have a look at Sirsa. This is in Haryana. We start with Haryana. Hetram, who's an ex-bank manager, representing the Lok Dal, gained Sirsa, defeating his nearest Congressite rival. This is a Lok Sabha seat. Ms. Shailaja, daughter of the previous candidate who died, by a very large margin of 1,20,000 votes. But one should add here that the Congress vote went down by 19% from 1984, but went up by 6% from 1987. Moving on to Rajasthan, another Lok Sabha constituency update. Shankar Lal retained Pali, defeating his nearest rival, Mr. Lodha of the BJP, by nearly 40,000 votes. The opposition was split here with the BJP and the Lok Dal and suffered the consequences. Moving on to Gujarat. Godhra, this is a major reversal for the Congress. It's a Janata Party gain. Here the opposition was united, and I think in these last two slides there's a story to be told. The opposition wins where it's united in Godhra, and it loses where it's disunited, it's split in Pali. And it's a fairly large margin which the Janata Party wins by 36,835 votes. Now moving on to the assembly constituencies. Malia. Here, this is in Gujarat. The BJP gained this seat from the Congress, and it was a sharp drop of Congress votes of about 24% swing away from the Congress. This is a sharp reversal. The Congress will be very disappointed with the Godhra result and this result. They will be not so unhappy with Dwarka from the point of view of the fact that it's a gain from the Congress, but it's not a very impressive gain. It's a gain from an independent last time. But the margin of victory was 7,600 odd votes. Moving on now to Madhya Pradesh, Lashkar East. Here we have BJP retains it, but the Congress vote is actually up here by 4%, so not too disappointing for the Congress, but at least the BJP will be satisfied that it's retained this seat. Moving on again to Gohad, Madhya Pradesh again. This Congress retains it, no change of hands, fairly satisfied, and a reasonable margin of 7,000 votes. Now, this is the Arjun Singh. Meant to be a tough fight. It wasn't a walkover by any means. I would think he'd be slightly disappointed, but perhaps relieved that at least he's won it by a reasonably comfortable margin. And that's moving on now to Rajasthan, Khetri. This is a major Congress gain. Rajasthan, they've done very well. We saw Pali earlier where they won by a large margin. Here the Congress vote went up by 9%. And they won by over 13,000, nearly 14,000 votes in a assembly seat, which is pretty good. Now, UP, this is Chhaproli, the Janata Party, which used to be the Lok Dal A. Now, this is actually Chaudhry Charan Singh's seat for many, many years, and it's won very comfortably. Again, it was united here, and therefore its vote went up. So the main party's vote went up here. So, once it was united, the opposition's main party vote went up, and the Congress vote, although it didn't decrease, it still lost by a large margin. Sorry, now we'll move on to West Bengal. This was a large win for the RSP, but this is the next seat is a major surprise. This is still in West Bengal at the next seat. If we can move on to Barabani, the Congress has gained this from the CPM. Right until the second last round, the CPM was leading by about 3,000 votes. But in the last stage, the Congress just overtook the CPM and won by a narrow margin of 600 votes, and which they'll be extremely pleased with because it's the first bit of good news from them from Bengal. But it was a very narrow margin. Vinod.
अभी तक जो भी संकेत मिलते रहे हैं, स्थिति लोकसभा के जो उपचुनाव हुए हैं उसमें लगभग वही है। इलाहाबाद में निर्दलीय श्री विश्वनाथ प्रताप सिंह जनमोर्चा के लगातार आगे हैं। सिरसा में लोकदल ने 1,20,000 वोटों से चुनाव जीत लिया है और पाली में राजस्थान कांग्रेस ने 39,250 वोटों से चुनाव जीता है और गोधरा में जनता पार्टी ने 36,835 वोटों से चुनाव जीता है। एक बात जो बार बार देखने में आई कि जहां पर भी विपक्ष ने एकता दिखाई और एक ही प्रत्याशी को खड़ा किया वहां लगभग विजय मिली, लेकिन जहां पर विपक्ष के वोट बटे वहां पर कांग्रेस को विजय मिली। काफी सारे चुनाव क्षेत्रों में ऐसा हुआ। असेंबली इलेक्शंस में, विधानसभा के उपचुनावों में अभी तक ऐसा ही है कि कांग्रेस आई 5 जगह पर आगे है। इनमें से कुछ ऐसे भी स्थान है जहां रिजल्ट्स डिक्लेयर हो चुके हैं और फायदा 1 सीट का हुआ है। भारतीय जनता पार्टी 2 स्थान, लोकदल 1 जहां पर फायदा 1 स्थान का हुआ है, सीपीएम 1 भी नहीं और 1 स्थान का नुकसान हुआ है सीपीएम को, जैसा कि बाराबनी चुनाव परिणाम से जाहिर होता है, और निर्दलीय 1 का नुकसान हुआ है। और अब एक नज़र इसके बाद इलाहाबाद पर, जहां शेखर गुप्ता हमारा इंतजार कर रहे हैं।
But Vinod, just before we go over that, go over to Allahabad, let's just have a little bit of a focus on what exactly is the background to this election. I mean, the Congress in Allahabad has had a amazing record, and not only the Congress, in fact, it has had great sort of personalities. We see Lal Bahadur Shastri won by 58% of the vote. These are the victors, the Congress record in Allahabad. And you can see VP Singh has stood from here twice. He lost once in the 1977 wave when he got only 31% of the vote. But he bounced back in 80 and won 46. And I'm sure he'll do better than 46 this time. And then the record, of course, was 1984 when Amitabh Bachchan won with 68% of the vote. The margin of victory is going to be an important thing. How much will VP Singh win by? Let's look at the record in the past. Amitabh Bachchan, of course, as we said, is a record. He won by a 43% margin, which was nearly 2 lakh votes. Bahuguna, again, actually a great vote puller in a psephological analysis. He's an extremely popular vote getter. Won by a lakh vote in 1971, which meant a lot. And VP Singh in 1980 won by almost 3/4 lakhs, about 0.75, 22%. And he'll be looking really to increase over that 0.75, 0.7%, 0.7 lakh votes. The average margin of victory in Allahabad has been 1 lakh votes over the all these elections. Right. And now, before we go to Allahabad, the position as far as VP Singh is concerned is that he leads at the moment by 17,000.
Okay, a quick recap, huh?
Yeah, sure.
पिछले जितने भी लोकसभा चुनाव हुए इलाहाबाद में, उसमें स्थिति इस तरह से रही कि अगर हम सन 71 से शुरू करें तो श्री बहुगुणा 39% वोटों के अंतर से जीते थे, 1 लाख वोट से। सन 1980 में श्री विश्वनाथ प्रताप सिंह 22% वोटों के अंतर से, यानी लगभग 70,000 वोटों से जीते थे, और सन 1984 में अमिताभ बच्चन 43% वोटों के अंतर से, यानी 1,90,000 वोटों के अंतर से जीते थे। और जो अभी तक की ताज़ा स्थिति है उसके अनुसार श्री विश्वनाथ प्रताप सिंह इलाहाबाद में 17,000 वोटों से आगे हैं। अब हम इलाहाबाद शेखर गुप्ता के पास चलते हैं।
Well, thanks. This is Shekhar Gupta in Allahabad. The news is that the pace of counting is still very, very slow, extremely painfully slow. After nearly 10 hours of counting, they've barely completed 2 rounds now. And the results officially announced so far say that Mr. VP Singh is leading by 16,662 votes. The tally at the end of the second round is Mr. VP Singh, 31,098 votes, Mr. Sunil Shastri, 14,470 votes, and Mr. Kanshiram, 8,964 votes. But the trend in the third round so far indicates that Mr. VP Singh has enlarged his lead to nearly 18,000 votes. There are expectant crowds milling outside. It's past midnight, but there are still about 5,000 people outside the collectorate area, which has been barred with barricades. There is heavy police presence, and people are being stopped to come in here. We've had some bad luck in getting candidates to come here and speak to us live from the counting center. Earlier, Mr. Sunil Shastri tried to come in here, but he was mobbed on the way, and he had to go back. A little while back, I spoke to him in the guest house where he's staying, and he did answer a few questions for us. Mr. Shastri, I'm extremely sorry to hear that you had trouble trying to reach us for an interview at the counting center. What exactly happened on the way?
Well, I'm also sorry that I couldn't make it because I was very near your place. but a mob of something like 200 people, they garroted me and they started threatening me and they did not permit me to move. And thus I had to return back. They even slapped my driver and they were trying to pull us out.
What were they demanding?
They were just raising slogans anti-Congress and anti-me. And they were declaring that their candidate has won.
Well, it's too early to say who has won, but the current trends so far indicate that you are trailing substantially behind Mr. VP Singh. What does it indicate? Do you still expect some kind of reversal?
Well, in a parliament election, I think more than people, like more than 4,50,000 voted, and so far only about 30,000 votes have been counted. I think still nothing can be said. And at the present, the trend shows certainly that VP Singh is leading, but the lead is not that substantial as it should have been if the other people, as they just now Sanjay Singh claimed that the victory would be something like 2 lakhs. Well, looking to their claim, the lead is not at all substantial. Anything can happen now, even.
Why is this election so special?
Well, I think, as the opposition claims, they have put VP Singh as a joint opposition candidate, and it is the prestige for them now. If they lose, I think they will have a very big setback.
This election was also unusual in the sense that you and Mr. VP Singh never said anything against each other personally. Why was it so?
Because I don't believe in making any personal attack, and I don't think that our election should be fought on individual basis. It should be fought on issues, it should be fought on policies, programs. And I made it a point when I went to the masses, when I went to the voters, I made it very clear that we have these issues before you. If you find us suitable, vote for Congress.
You had left the UP government some time back following some differences. It seems that you were not very happy with the way things are progressing there. Some people suspect that your heart has really not been in this campaign. Is that true?
I have been very clear that as a true congressman, I will work wholeheartedly to strengthen the party and to bring up the image of the Congress party. And that is what exactly I was doing even after resigning from the ministry. And when I was told by my leader, Rajiv Ji, that I have to fight from Allahabad, I came to Allahabad with a firm footing, and I accepted the challenge, and I canvassed for the last 21 days, day and night, so that I could reach each and every one before the poll took place.
In the election, it seems that the only issue that you personally raised was the popularity of your late father, Mr. Lal Bahadur Shastri. Didn't you have any other issues?
No, I was very clear. I said that we have, the Congress party has a very good background, and we have been always speaking on policies, programs and ideologies, and that was my main thrust. And but since my father represented this constituency, and people knew that I am his son who has now come as a Congress candidate, I also mentioned about my father's great work which he did in this area.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So while Mr. Shastri persists in his optimism, there is euphoria in the VP Singh camp. It's unfortunate, however, that Mr. VP Singh could not come here for an interview now as he had promised. He's conveyed to us his regrets and said that he cannot come in because of certain problems in the family. However, I spoke to him in the afternoon and did raise some of the issues. I, for example, asked him how does he explain his constant changing of minds. For example, he had first of all said that he would not seek government office, but now he's running for parliament. Second, he said that he would contest only if Mr. Amitabh Bachchan was in the campaign, but even after he withdrew, he continued to contest. Third, he had said that he would not use any posters or loudspeakers or cars in his campaign, but you see them all over the constituency. Mr. VP Singh answered, saying that seeking election to parliament is not the same thing as seeking a government office, one. Second, he said that although he had decided to withdraw after Mr. Amitabh Bachchan's failure to come here to file his nominations, he also had obligations to the combined opposition, which had chosen him as their joint candidate. So he had no choice but to continue. And he says that all the posters that have come up all over the town and all the cars that are running all over the constituency have not been funded by his campaign. These are all part of efforts of individual supporters that his campaign has in the constituency. It's unfortunate that we don't have him here now to answer questions, but that's about all we have for you tonight from Allahabad. Thank you. This is Shekhar Gupta in Allahabad.
Thank you very much, Shekhar. That was very interesting. It's a pity that Mr. VP Singh couldn't come and be here with us, but it was extremely sporting, I think, of Sunil Shastri to come in spite of the fact that he has lost this election and actually try and explain his position. It's unusual and most welcome. But he did raise something before. Before taking up one of the points he raised, I'd like to introduce our panel who I'd like to question. Mr. Nihal Singh, who we've had earlier and didn't get much of a chance because there were two politicians and it's difficult to get a word in edgeways when they're around. And we have an earlier participant as well, Chandan Mitra. Can I start with you, sir? He was mobbed while he was trying to get to the Doordarshan stands and to come on this program, in fact, by 200 people, and they slapped the driver and all that. There's been quite a lot of this in these elections. We know that Faridabad's there have been violence there, one person died. Why is this happening? Is this a bit disturbing?
Well, I think there's always some violence in elections. We've seen that constantly. What is disturbing to me is the spirit of intolerance, that you have areas where a particular party thinks it's a stronghold, and then they virtually banish all the other parties or the main contenders, which I think is very regretful. But may I make a few more general comments?
Sorry, just one further point. This is by both sides, the ruling party and the opposition.
Yes, yes, I think so. It depends upon the strongholds, of course.
Sorry, please continue now. What's the overall message you get from this election?
Well, the message is, what was all this shouting about? Well, the point is that the Congress hasn't done all that badly. Some might say it has done rather well, considering everything. The second point is that if the opposition thought it was a referendum on Rajiv Gandhi government's policies, well, the answer is not very clear, is it? Because obviously, I think in Allahabad, VP Singh should win. But again, the margin should be interesting, margin of victory. But if you take the overall results, contrary to the earlier results or the picture that was available earlier, I think the Congress hasn't done too badly. And the message is that both the Congress and the opposition parties will have to work very hard for the general elections.
Yes, that's the one message the voters certainly has given, kept them on their toes. Chandan, what message do you get overall from these by-elections?
Well, I think the main message is that there's no message. See, and that is, I think this point came up in the last program as well, and it's basically that the voters have kept their options open. One would have expected that this being a by-election, just about 18 months before general election, the voter would have delivered a much more sharper warning to the ruling party. To that extent, I'm somewhat surprised that the ruling party has done reasonably well, Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan in particular. Haryana, according to your exit poll, if Faridabad turns out, that would be interesting. But on the whole, it's, I think the message is louder to the opposition, that the opposition needs to get united, the opposition needs to come together on a common platform and put forward a common program and ideology before it can hope to gain very much in the next parliamentary election. That, I think, is the real message of this.
Chandan, you used an expression, it seems to be a confused verdict. How is it confused? Do you still stick to it?
Yes, I think it is still confused in the sense that what we had discussed earlier, that this was the first major by-election, a round of by-elections in the Hindi heartland. And here, one would have expected the trend to go one way or the other way.
A sweep, you mean?
A sweep, yes. That's what we've noticed in the Hindi belt, whether it's 77 or 80, 84. It goes one definite direction. But this time, we find that two states go one way, two others go another way, and so we can't make a general prediction about which way the Hindi heartland would go. And as we all know, the Hindi heartland will basically decide who comes to power in Delhi next time. And so to that extent, I stick by the point that it's a confused verdict.
I'd like to ask actually both of you, but you sir first, about the point you raised about the margin of victory in Allahabad. You think it is important, the actual size, it is important. What would you say would be a disappointment for VP Singh? What would be euphoria for him, and what would be possible?
Well, I think anything below 1 lakh would be disappointment for VP Singh. Euphoria would be 2 lakhs.
That's a tall order, actually.
Well, you asked about euphoria.
Yes.
But anything above 1 lakh would be respectable from his point of view, from his political point of view.
Yes, yes.
If I may come in here, one point I think needs to be made, not so much in connection with the margin, but on the question of the referendum, which Mr. Nihal Singh referred to. I think there was a possibility of this by-election being converted into a referendum, first, had Amitabh Bachchan agreed to contest in Allahabad, and second, had Mr. VP Singh campaigned in all other constituencies, which surprisingly he did not do. And if VP Singh had contested, sort of campaigned in the other constituencies, getting out of Allahabad, going to Faridabad, Sirsa, Madhya Pradesh, Godhra, all these places, then I think that would have given a great fillip to the opposition campaign. But that did not happen. And to that extent, I think right from the beginning, the opposition too did not quite succeed in converting this into the referendum that they could very well have.
Would you like to venture another guess? Why didn't Mr. VP Singh leave Allahabad?
Well, Allahabad turned out to be a tough seat, and I think the feedback that they had was that it was not going to be a walkover, irrespective of whether it was Mr. Sunil Shastri or any other candidate. And obviously, Mr. VP Singh's entire political future depended on a victory in Allahabad. He could not afford to lose. So even if he wins by 15,000 or a lakh, he has to win in order to stay on in opposition politics. So he couldn't afford to take a chance.
हिंदी भाषी दर्शकों के लिए श्री विश्वनाथ प्रताप सिंह, उनके लिए बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण चुनाव था इलाहाबाद का, चंदन मित्रा के मुताबिक। इसलिए वो शायद इलाहाबाद छोड़कर नहीं जा पाए दूसरे चुनाव क्षेत्रों में दौरा करने के लिए। अगर वो जाते तो शायद कांग्रेस आई को और नुकसान होता। अगले आम चुनाव से पहले ये शायद आखिरी उपचुनाव है, ये हम पहले भी कह चुके हैं। एक बात साफ हो गई है कि ना तो ये चुनाव कांग्रेस आई सरकार के खिलाफ रेफरेंडम या जनमत रहा, और ना ही विपक्ष के हक में सन 1977 जैसी लहर रही। ना कोई लहर देखने में आई, ना कोई रेफरेंडम देखने में आया। हम जहां थे वहीं हैं। भारत के नागरिकों ने कांग्रेस और विपक्ष दोनों को एक तरह से चेतावनी दी है कि अगले आम चुनाव तक पूरे हिंदुस्तान का वोटर कांग्रेस आए और विपक्ष दोनों को अच्छी तरह से जांचेगा, परखेगा। इन उपचुनाव के नतीजों पर कांग्रेस आय को या विपक्ष को निश्चिंत होने की आवश्यकता नहीं है।
A last word from you, sir. Overall, what would you like to say as sort of summing up of what you've seen today in these by-elections?
Well, I think...
I mean, looking to the future, basically, what are the implications for a general election? Will we have an early general election as a result of this?
Well, of course, it's an open question. I think it's unlikely because we are basically where we were. But I think the overall impression I get from the results we have seen so far is the fact that the opposition parties are on a sticky wicket, because there is a general feeling that they will not be able to get together and they will be quarreling among themselves. And because, after all, it was much easier for the voters to teach the Congress a lesson in a by-election where the survival of the government was not concerned. The fact that they chose not to do it, I think, holds a lesson particularly for the opposition.
There is a strong lesson in this for them, in the sense that when they, in the seats that they were not united, not only does that arithmetically divide their votes, but also the sheer impression of a divided house moves people, voters, over to the Congress. So it's a double impact. And where they have been united, they've swung people towards them and the candidates have won. Are they going to learn something about this for the future?
Well, there are two questions, I think. One is the tactical one. Of course, they'll do much better if they have single candidates. But I think you also have to consider that voters in a general election are also thinking of who is going to come to power at the center. So, to that extent, their task will be much more difficult than in a by-election. Because I think the general impression seems to be, and I think for good reasons, that the opposition cannot unite in the real sense. I mean, you have the Communist Party is at one end and the Bharatiya Janata Party at the other end, and then you have a whole collection of centrist parties who are quarreling among themselves. The fact that most of the leaders, with some exceptions, interesting exceptions, opposition leaders went to campaign for VP Singh was interesting, but it's not very convincing, at least to me.
I see. One last quick question of you, Chandan. From the point of view of the lesson, do you think there's any possibility as a result of this, if the monsoon is good, that we'll have an early general election on the basis of these by-elections?
No, I don't think that an early election...
It's not good enough?
It's not good enough. It's not good enough. It's a divided verdict. There is no particular reason for the Congress to go in for a by-election. Only thing, I think that the ruling party may conclude that after 1 year of political sort of instability and turmoil, things are not too bad. That I think is the overall message for the ruling party.
So, what kind of final statement will you give on the performance of opposition now?
Well, on the performance of the opposition, one can only say that if they can unite and come together on some kind of a programmatic basis, I should think that they would give the ruling party a very good run for the money in the north. And considering that the ruling party's position in the south has been quite bad for the last few years, the next election is an absolutely open question. All the more reason why there shouldn't be any hurry, as far as the Congress is concerned, to go in for an early election.
हिंदी भाषी दर्शकों के लिए श्री निहाल सिंह का ये कहना है कि अगर श्री विश्वनाथ प्रताप सिंह की जीत 1 लाख से कम वोटों से होती है, प्रणॉय के मुताबिक जो उन्होंने एग्जिट पोल किया इलाहाबाद में, श्री वीपी सिंह की जीत 1 लाख लगभग 1 लाख वोटों से होगी। निहाल सिंह जी का ये कहना है कि अगर 1 लाख से कम वोटों से होती है तो ये बड़ी निराशा की बात होगी, 2 लाख से ज़्यादा वोटों से होती है तो ये लगभग रेफरेंडम के नज़दीक होगा, और अगर 1 लाख से ज़्यादा होता है तो वो रिस्पेक्टेबल मार्जिन है। इतना उम्मीद की जाती है कि यदि प्रत्याशी श्री विश्वनाथ प्रताप सिंह हों एक तरफ और दूसरी तरफ सुनील शास्त्री हों, तो पिछले रिकॉर्ड को दिमाग में रखते हुए 1 लाख से ज़्यादा वोट उनको मिलने चाहिए। दूसरी बात जो सबक मिलता है इस पूरे उपचुनाव से वो यही है कि हम जहां थे वहीं हैं। न कांग्रेस को न विपक्ष को निश्चिंत होने की ज़रूरत है। अगले आम चुनाव तक जनता जांचेगी और परखेगी।
Thank you, Vinod. Just a last quick roundup of the Lok Sabha party position. If we look at the chart, this is, in fact, at 11 p.m. Nothing has changed since then, and this will probably be the position right to the end. The Jan Morcha, which is not really a party, it's a movement, it's not a recognized party, deliberately so by its leader, is leading comfortably, but it's a slow process. The counting is very slow. Sirsa, the Lokdar, has won by a large margin. Pali in Rajasthan, the Congress has won. And Godhra in Gujarat, the Janata Party has gained that seat from the Congress with about 36,000 votes. Moving on to the assembly election position, if we have a quick roundup before we go to sleep. The Congress I is leading in 5, and that's a net gain of 1. I mean, it's lost some and won some, but the net gain is 1. The BJP is leading in 2. The Lokdal in 1, which is it's a gain for it. The CPM has 1 in 1 actually, but it is lost in 1, so it's a down 1. There's a slight mistake there. And an independent has gone down 1, which is what where the Congress I gained, in fact. Well, that's all for tonight. I think, as I repeat, tomorrow morning we will not be coming on because the story is more or less clear. I think there's nothing more really. And there's something much more interesting after this. The feature film continues.
Good night.
Good night.